Ever scroll through social media and just get lost in that endless feed of content? It's like it's almost hypnotic, right? Like you just keep hitting refresh, waiting for that next little dopamine hit.
It's like we're wired to seek out those quick bursts of pleasure.
Yeah, and it's not just social media. I mean, think about streaming services, fast food, those mobile games with all those
It's
microtransactions.
everywhere.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, I thought we could explore this whole idea of instant gratification and how it affects our ability to achieve like real, lasting success. What do you think?
I think it's a great topic, and
Yeah.
it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially in today's world.
Right. It's like we're constantly bombarded with opportunities for instant gratification. But the thing is, like, the most meaningful things in life, they rarely come quickly or easily, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Building a successful business, mastering a new skill, developing a deep and meaningful relationship. These things take time, effort, and a willingness to delay gratification.
So it's like we're kind of trading long-term fulfillment for those fleeting moments of instant satisfaction.
Exactly. And it's a trade-off that often leaves us feeling empty and unfulfilled in the long run.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? I mean, how does this instant gratification mindset affect our ability to achieve success?
Well, let's look at a hypothetical example. Let's say we have two individuals. We'll call them Alex and Jordan.
Okay.
Alex is all about those quick wins. They're constantly chasing the next dopamine hit, whether it's through social media likes, online shopping, or just indulging in those easy pleasures. Jordan, on the other hand, is more focused on the long game. They're willing to delay gratification, to put in the hard work and effort now to achieve those bigger goals down the road.
So Alex is all about the instant,
Oh,
and Jordan's all about the delayed.
exactly. And over time, we start to see a divergence in their paths. Alex may experience those initial bursts of excitement and pleasure, but their progress tends to stagnate.
They're kind of stuck in that instant gratification loop.
Exactly. Jordan, on the other hand, may experience some frustration and discomfort in the short term, but they're steadily moving towards those bigger goals. They're building momentum, developing resilience, and ultimately achieving a greater level of fulfillment and success.
So it's not about judging anyone's choices, but rather understanding that different approaches can lead to different outcomes.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that we all have different strengths and weaknesses when it comes to this. Some people are naturally more inclined towards delayed gratification, while others may need to work a bit harder to cultivate those skills.
Right. So how do we actually rewire our brains to embrace this whole delayed gratification thing? I mean, if our brains are wired for instant gratification, how do we override that default setting?
Well, one of the most fascinating examples of this concept in action comes from a classic study known as the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment.
Oh yeah, the marshmallow test. I've heard about that.
Right. So in this experiment, researchers at Stanford University presented children with a choice. They could either eat one marshmallow immediately or wait 15 minutes and receive two marshmallows.
Ooh, tough choice.
It is tough, right? Especially for a child.
Yeah, I mean, I love marshmallows, so I can only imagine how tempting that must have been for those kids.
Right. And what's truly remarkable is that the researchers followed these children for years afterward, and they discovered a fascinating correlation. The children who were able to delay gratification, the ones who resisted that one marshmallow in exchange for the promise of two later, they tended to have better life outcomes.
You're kidding. Really? Like what kind of outcomes?
Well, they achieved higher academic performance, they had better social skills, they even scored higher on standardized tests.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And this study suggests that the ability to delay gratification is linked to a whole host of cognitive and emotional skills that contribute to success. Things like self-control, impulse regulation, the ability to manage emotions, and stay focused on goals.
So it's not just about the marshmallow. It's about developing those underlying skills that allow us to make choices that are aligned with our long-term goals, even when we're faced with those immediate temptations.
Exactly. And those skills are essential for success in all areas of life, not just resisting marshmallows.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. But if these skills were so crucial, why are we so easily seduced by instant gratification? It's like our brains are working against us.
Well, it all comes down to our evolutionary wiring. Our ancestors, their survival often depended on immediate action.
So back in the caveman days, it was all about eat now, think later.
Yeah, in a way. That immediate instinctive response was often crucial for survival. But in today's world, our basic needs are met, and we face more complex challenges, and that same wiring can sometimes lead us astray.
It's like our brains haven't quite caught up to the modern world.
You could say that. We're still influenced by those ancient survival mechanisms that prioritize immediate rewards. But the good news is that our brains are also incredibly malleable. Just as we can develop bad habits, we can also cultivate good ones. And one of the most powerful tools for rewiring our brains for delayed gratification is to understand how our reward system actually works.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about this reward system. Is it like a secret control panel in our brains?
You could think of it that way. It's a complex network of neural pathways that release dopamine, a neurotransmitter that's associated with pleasure and motivation.
Dopamine, that's the feel-good chemical, right?
Exactly. And when we engage in activities that are pleasurable or rewarding, our brains release dopamine. And that creates a feeling of satisfaction and reinforces that behavior.
So it's like our brain is giving us a little pat on the back every time we do something that feels good.
Right. And the problem is that many of the things that trigger this dopamine rush in the modern world are things that provide instant gratification, but they don't necessarily contribute to our long-term well-being.
Like those social media likes and that junk food we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And the more we engage in these activities, the more we reinforce those neural pathways, making it even harder to resist those temptations in the future.
So it's like we're training our brains to crave instant gratification.
Exactly. But here's the good news. We can also train our brains to appreciate and value delayed gratification.
Okay, that's what I want to know. How do we do that?
Well, one of the most effective strategies is to start by setting clear long-term goals that truly inspire you.
So it's not just about setting any old goal. It has to be something that really lights a fire under us.
Right. Think about it this way. If you're trying to resist a tempting treat, it's much easier to do so if you have a compelling reason to stay on track. Maybe you're training for a marathon or working towards a dream career.
When you connect your efforts to a larger purpose, it gives you that extra motivation to resist those immediate urges and stay focused on the long game.
Precisely. And that's where the real power of delayed gratification lies. It's not about denying ourselves pleasure or living a life of deprivation. It's about making choices that align with our long-term vision and create a life that is truly fulfilling and meaningful.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But setting goals is one thing. How do we actually stick to them when those instant gratification gremlins come knocking?
That's a great question, and that's what we'll dive into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll uncover some specific strategies and techniques for rewiring your brain to embrace delayed gratification and achieve those big audacious goals.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
So we were talking about how to actually rewire our brains for delayed gratification. It's one thing to understand it, but actually putting it into practice, that's the real challenge.
Right. It's like knowing you should be saving for retirement, but still splurging on that fancy coffee every morning.
Exactly. So let's dive into some practical strategies that can help us bridge that gap between knowing and doing.
Okay, I'm ready. Give me the goods.
Well, one technique I find particularly interesting is called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. Okay, that sounds kind of intriguing, if a little bit dangerous. What's that all about?
Basically, it's the idea of pairing something you enjoy, that instant gratification thing, with something you need to do but often procrastinate on, something that requires delayed gratification.
So you're talking about like rewarding yourself for doing the hard stuff.
Exactly. Let's say you love listening to audiobooks, but you hate folding laundry.
Okay, I can relate to that.
You could bundle those two activities by only allowing yourself to listen to your favorite audiobooks while you're folding laundry.
So it's like making the boring stuff a little more bearable by associating it with something enjoyable.
Exactly. And over time, you start to associate that activity, the laundry folding in this case, with pleasure, making it easier to stick with it.
It's like you're hacking your own reward system.
It got it. And another powerful strategy is pre-commitment.
Pre-commitment. Okay, you're going to have to explain that one to me.
It's making a decision in advance that eliminates the possibility of giving in to temptation later.
So kind of like tying your future self to the mast.
Exactly, like Ulysses and the Sirens. If you're trying to save money but you tend to overspend when you're browsing online, you could pre-commit by setting up automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings account each month.
So the money's gone before you can even think about spending it.
Precisely. You can apply this strategy to all sorts of areas. If you're trying to eat healthier, you could pre-commit by meal prepping on Sundays so you have healthy lunches ready to go for the week.
I see. It's about removing the decision-making from those moments of weakness, those moments when you're more likely to give in to that instant gratification urge.
Right. And remember, the more we practice these strategies, the easier they become. It's like any skill, it takes time and repetition to develop.
So it's not about being perfect all the time. It's about building those habits, those uh those mental muscles that make it easier to choose long-term rewards over immediate pleasure.
Exactly. And speaking of mental muscles, there's another powerful tool we can use, visualization.
Visualization. Okay, now you're talking my language. I'm a big believer in the power of the mind.
It may sound a bit woo-woo, but visualization is actually incredibly effective for helping people achieve their goals. When we visualize ourselves achieving something, our brains actually fire in a similar way as if we were actually performing those actions.
So it's like tricking your brain into thinking you've already achieved the goal.
In a way, yes. Visualization helps us create a mental blueprint for success. It allows us to see the path ahead, to anticipate challenges, and to rehearse those moments where we might be tempted to give in to instant gratification.
So how do we actually visualize effectively? Is it just about daydreaming about our desires?
It's a bit more than that. The key is to make it as vivid and sensory as possible. Don't just think about achieving your goal, imagine it. See yourself crossing that finish line, feel the emotions, hear the sounds, really bring that vision to life.
So it's like creating a mental movie of our future success.
Exactly. And the more detail and emotion you can bring to that visualization, the more powerful it will be.
So we're basically programming our brains for success by repeatedly exposing them to this vision of our desired outcome.
Precisely. And here's the really cool part. When you do this consistently, your brain starts to believe that it's possible and it starts looking for opportunities to make that vision a reality.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. But let's be real. Even with all these great tools and strategies, there is still going to be times when we slip up, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're all human and we're all going to face challenges and setbacks. The key is to not beat ourselves up when we stumble. It's about learning from those experiences and getting back on track.
So it's about being kind to ourselves and remembering that it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And the more we practice, the easier it becomes. We develop greater patience, discipline, and self-control, empowering us to achieve those goals that once seemed impossible.
This has been so insightful. It's not about denying ourselves pleasure. It's about understanding our brains and making conscious choices that align with our long-term goals. But I'm curious to see how this all plays out in different areas of life. How can we apply these ideas to our finances, our health, our relationships?
Great question. Let's dive into some real-world examples in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychology, the strategies, but I'm really curious to see how this whole delayed gratification thing actually plays out in different areas of our lives. Like, let's start with finances, because that's a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, finances are a perfect example for that instant gratification trap can really get us into trouble.
Right. It's like you see something you want, you get that little dopamine hit, and boom, you swiped your credit card without even thinking about it.
It's so easy to fall into that pattern. But when we start applying those principles of delayed gratification to our finances, well, we start making different choices.
We start thinking about the future,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, is this purchase really going to bring me joy a year from now? Or would I be better off investing this money and letting it grow?
It's a mindset shift from short-term pleasure to long-term prosperity. And that's where things like saving and investing become so crucial.
They're all about delaying gratification today so you can reap the rewards tomorrow. I mean, compound interest is a perfect example of that. The longer you let your money grow, the more it multiplies, creating this like snowball effect.
Right, it's like planting a tiny seed that grows into a mighty oak tree. But you gotta have that patience, that discipline to let it grow.
And it's not just about finances. This whole delayed gratification thing, it applies to our health too, right?
Absolutely. Eating healthy, exercising regularly, getting enough sleep, these are all things that benefit us in the long run, but they often require us to make choices that we might not enjoy so much in the moment.
It's like that battle between, I don't know, that delicious slice of pizza versus like, feeling good and energized in the long run.
Exactly. And I think the key here is to remember that those small, healthy choices we make each day, they're really investments in our future well-being.
I like that. It's like we're making deposits in our health bank account.
Hmm.
And speaking of investments, I think relationships are another area where delayed gratification plays a huge role.
Oh, for sure. Building strong, meaningful relationships, that takes time, effort, and a willingness to sometimes prioritize the needs of others, even when it means putting our own immediate desires on hold.
Right. It's about really listening, even when you're tired or stressed. It's about being there for someone, even when you're busy. It's about those small acts of kindness and connection that build up over time and create a bond that can weather any storm.
You said it. In a world that's so focused on instant connections and superficial interactions, true intimacy requires us to slow down, to be present, and to nurture those connections over time.
It's about playing the long game in love, too. And you know what else I've been thinking about? Creativity. Like, I feel like delayed gratification is so important for that, too.
Totally. I mean, think about it. There's that temptation in the creative process to chase trends, to look for that quick validation, to produce work that's maybe flashy but lacks depth.
Yeah, but real creativity, it often requires us to resist those urges, to dig deep, to trust our own process, and to be okay with things taking time.
To honor that messy middle, that incubation period where things might feel uncertain or uncomfortable.
But it's in that space of delayed gratification, that the real magic often happens. It's where the breakthroughs emerge, where the truly original ideas come to life.
It's like a seed germinating underground. You can't rush it, you can't force it, you have to trust the process.
Wow. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how this whole delayed gratification thing works and how it really touches every aspect of our lives.
It's been great to explore this with you. I think the biggest takeaway here is that delayed gratification isn't about deprivation. It's about empowerment. It's about making choices that align with our long-term vision and ultimately creating a life that is truly fulfilling and meaningful.
Exactly. It's not about saying no to pleasure. It's about saying yes to a life that is richer, deeper, and more aligned with our true values. So for everyone listening, I encourage you to think about what areas of your life could benefit from a little more delayed gratification. What are you willing to invest in today to create a more fulfilling and rewarding tomorrow? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.